Hi. So, I'm not sure I'm quite old enough to have had a midlife crisis. But something happened to me recently that might just qualify. I started listening to death metal. Which sounds like that. Now, one of the fun things about death metal is that there are all these bands, but the way that they write their names are really hard to read and see. And so I thought we could play just a little game here. The three bands that you just saw listed there, this is the first one. Can anybody read what that says? Go ahead, take a stab. Ooh, close. Gate Creeper. Good job. The band you just heard is this one. Come on. Ooh, good. Ripped to Shreds. Excellent. And finally, good luck. Believe it or not, that says Blood Incantation. Now, I love many kinds of music. Taylor Swift, show tunes, classic rock, ambient electronica, but death metal had never been one of them. So when a good friend of mine suggested that I listen to an album, I did, and I hated it. The singing was guttural and gross and loud and made no sense, and I really didn't enjoy it. But I got the recommendation from a friend, and so I kept listening, more out of curiosity than conviction, and slowly something shifted. I began to appreciate the vocals as another kind of instrument, not melody, but more like percussion. I asked for more recommendations. I started recognizing what I liked and didn't like, and I found myself unexpectedly invested. Most importantly, I had a friend and a guide to help me explore. These are some of our exchanges. I showed this to my students, and they made fun of me for using full sentences in my text messages. Before long, the natural next step in this process, I started going to shows, death metal shows. There I was, standing in the back with my earplugs in, gently rocking back and forth with the other middle-aged dads. I went to one, and then I went to another, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another. They were really fun. I didn't mess with the mosh pit, though. That's a little dangerous. I'm old. Before long, I learned a lot about the genre of death metal. And the main thing I learned is that death metal is silly and cute. Look at those guys. They're so cute. The thing is, the bands and songs, they're hyperbolic, and they mostly caricature and lampoon the themes of death, evil, and destruction that they sing about. Everybody's in on the joke. It's this warm, small community where people compliment your band t-shirts and swap stories and always show up for the opening acts. You've seen that motion before from her. And I've been to over 10, I think, death metal shows now, and I gotta say, they have been some of the most rewarding live music experiences of my entire life. They're in small places, the tickets are cheap, and the only, I would say, live music that I've attended that has trumped my time at these shows is that one. Because, I mean, come on, it's Taylor. So, why am I talking about death metal at TEDx? That's my friend who got me into death metal. We're wearing the same shirt. I'm talking about death metal because it's an important part of my identity that I developed at age 38, the old-fashioned way. Relying on a strong bond with a trusted friend, I ventured out of my comfort zone to try something new. I gave it more than a passing chance, sitting for long stretches with music I didn't initially love. And most importantly, it led me to real in-person social interaction and the shared experience of great live music. For generations, our identities grew out of this kind of shared, lived experience. We figured out who we were by being with others and letting time do its work. But these days, when so much of our life unfolds online, when, as many teenagers report, their in-person selves feel like mere extensions of their online selves, when 8th graders are concerned about their personal brand, our ability as humans to figure out who we are is under grave threat. We don't build a sense of self. We scroll for one. And anytime we scroll, the algorithm's in control. Hey, I teach a class here called Connaissance du Monde that asks students to explore what they care about, what really interests them. And when asked what they're interested in, many students struggle to name something specific. The class depends on them being fascinated, even obsessed by something, but time and again, they struggle to name something other than a broad, safe category: music, sports. It's not that they don't care, I think. It's just that they're unsure how to begin, because their instincts have been shaped by the way that they engage with content. Or more accurately, the way content engages with them. On TikTok and other platforms, interest doesn't have to be declared. The algorithm searches for it. We scroll, it watches. We pause, it learns. Over time, it starts to feel like it knows us. But that sense of recognition is selective. The algorithm builds a version of you based on patterns, based on what you've already liked or lingered on. And then it shows you more of the same thing, not to expand your world, but to hold your attention. It doesn't ask you to grow. It doesn't challenge or complicate your tastes. It just reflects back what it thinks will keep you scrolling. Researchers have started to describe this idea as the algorithmic self. I'm not sure you can quite see him, but he's holding a phone. In one study, the authors compare the algorithmic self to a crystal. A crystal doesn't grow or adapt. It refracts. It catches light and throws it back in predictable patterns. In the same way, the algorithm builds an image of you based only on what it has already seen. It reflects that image back over and over again. It gives the appearance of complexity, but it's ultimately static, showing you fragments of yourself without allowing you to discover anything new. And those fragments can be misleading. One day you linger a little too long on a woodworking video, or fall down a rabbit hole of those oddly satisfying hydraulic press clips. You've been there. Not because you're passionate about hydraulic engineering or whittling spoons, but because you were tired or curious or just bored. Only the algorithm doesn't know that. It assumes that momentary interest is a part of who you are. So now, your feed is woodworking guy and hydraulic press.
Recently, I was commissioned to make a handle for this guy here.
Like this.
So in today's video, I'm going to go through the full process of how I turn big old chunks of ash fresh from the tree into usable handles for my tools. Hopefully this video will be of use to anyone who can...
Oh, hang on. Let's have those guys again. Oop, never mind. Anyway, it's exhausting, that in your head all the time. And it's not self, it's algorithm. But there's something more insidious than cute Irish woodworking guy and hydraulic press happening here. It's not just that the algorithm mistakes your fleeting curiosity for deep interest. It's that it actively inhibits your ability to form interest at all. Ezra Klein and Jonathan Haidt have pointed out that scrolling is merely a stimulus-response loop. Each clip, each post delivers a tiny dopamine hit, fleeting, shallow, ultimately unsatisfying. You're being nudged, not nourished. When your relationship to content is built on these fast, low bursts of stimulation, you're not exploring who you are and what you like. You're just fodder for the algorithm. Your brain becomes trained for reaction, not reflection. Your heart, distracted by novelty, forgets what it feels like to really love something. Over time, the slow drip of fleeting content erodes your capacity to be absorbed by something, to sink into it, to wrestle with it, to fall in love with it. It would actually be more accurate to say that TikTok is scrolling you. I think this is what I see in my CDM students. Not apathy or laziness, but a kind of identity paralysis Their ability to actively explore their own identity has been replaced by the passive consumption of whatever they are shown. And it doesn't just happen to students. When passive scrolling becomes your dominant way of engaging with the world, you're not just more distractible, you're more persuadable. You become someone whose sense of self is driven not by reflection or desire, but by whatever gets pushed next. And what happens when the thing that gets pushed next is violent, or misogynistic, or anti-democratic? You absorb it like everything else until it becomes, you think, a part of your identity. But that's not finding yourself. It's much closer to losing yourself. The host of one of my favorite podcasts, Search Engine, up here, recently interviewed the director of this fabulous new documentary series called Social Studies, which I recommend to all of you. If you're a teenager, watch it with your parents. If you're a parent, watch it with your teenagers. The filmmaker tracks the lives of 10 different teenagers in Los Angeles over the course of a year, and they, if you can believe it, give her unfettered 24/7 screen-recorded access to everything they do on their phones. In the course of this conversation about the documentary, the podcast host asks a question that really struck me. It's a question that I think someone who is a teenager might ask of someone who isn't and is saying the kinds of things that I'm saying. And the question was, how do you get off social media without people forgetting that you exist? So linked are the digital and in-person selves for people who've never taken a breath in a world without smartphones, that to remove, to get rid of, to pare down the online version would somehow meaningfully mean to lose a part of yourself. If you're not consuming content, if you're not feeding the feed, do you even count? Do you still matter? I think you do. And I think I have an answer to that question. In fact, I think I have 3. Number 1, you have to spend time. Falling in love with death metal did not happen to me in an afternoon. It took sustained attention, active listening, and repeated exposure. I had to work at it for a little. And in that work, I discovered something real. In a world where so much is engineered for instant appeal, the act of spending time, of sticking with something unfamiliar, is a kind of resistance. And it's a path to deeper connection. 2, take risks. The first time I put on an album or went to a show, I didn't know what to expect. It was strange and kind of scary. But I gave it a chance. I kept going. Trying new things, especially ones that don't cater to our pre-existing tastes, requires a willingness to be uncomfortable. That discomfort is where real growth happens. It's where identity begins to stretch. And third, find people. All of this started with a friend, someone I trusted. And from there, it grew into a broader community, a room full of strangers wearing obscure t-shirts and earplugs, all brought together by a shared passion. Algorithms offer personalized content, but they don't offer relationships. They don't offer the vulnerability and reciprocity that real connection demands. No, not even in the comment section. If you want to find out who you are, look to who you're with, not who you follow. I got to leave you with a little bit from my girl, Joan Didion, one of my absolute favorite nonfiction writers. In her 1961 essay on self-respect, Didion writes about what happens when you let your sense of self be determined by external factors, things that are not you. She's talking about the expectations of others and how hard it is to be a person when you try to please everyone around you. She writes, "To free us from the expectations of others, to give us back to ourselves, there lies the singular power of self-respect. Without it, one eventually discovers the final turn of the screw. One runs away to find oneself and finds no one at home." These days, it's algorithms, not expectations, that represent the biggest threat to our sense of self. The algorithm doesn't reflect or curate our interests. It determines them. It creates a version of us based on our most impulsive, fleeting behaviors. Not a self we've built, but one that's been fed back to us until it feels like it's ours. That's the algorithmic self. One runs away to find oneself and finds only a For You page at home. So, I encourage you all, no matter your age, to go looking for yourselves in the real world, not the curated one. Spend time, take risks, find people. And don't be surprised if the part of yourself that you happen to find is wearing earplugs and a black t-shirt, perfectly at home, in a room full of noise.